that year, where she was named #1 of 21 captains in the Mission Support Group and the Mission Support Group Company Grade Officer of the Year. In October of 2004, we had a tasking to deploy to Iraq. Myself, Cynthia, our first sergeant, one of our other lieutenants, and then we had a chief also join us from Travis Air Force Base. And we were going to be the command element for the 732nd Expeditionary Civil Engineering Squadron for the next 7 months. Arrived there in October and came back home in May of '05. I primarily took Cynthia because Cynthia was the only combat veteran of recent times that we had in the squadron from the officer point of view. Our first sergeant had deployed way back in Panama about 20 years prior, but Cynthia had recently been in Iraq, knew the country, knew how the operations, knew how to work with the sister services, so I made her my operations officer, and we successfully deployed there in October. A couple of accomplishments while she was over there. January of '05, she was named the 332nd Expeditionary Wing Company Grade Officer of the Month. And I tell you, that's a big deal because in Iraq, the Air Force has one wing but 4 Air Force bases. So all those other bases are groups, and we have one overall wing for all of Iraq. And they're made up of multiple pilots, multiple operators, multiple LROs. So that was a big deal winning. That twice she was named Company Grade Officer of the Month for the group. She just did a bang-up job for us. I was forced to give you a perspective, our squadron encompassed 18 different detachments. We took care of all the Army in lieu of missions, and we were in Iraq and Kuwait. Had about 435 engineers that were assigned to the squadron at multiple locations. One of our most challenging locations, however, was what we call Detachment 5, which was at Abu Ghraib Prison. 60 engineers taking care of the detainee camp operations at Abu Ghraib. I had some challenges with the major, who was my detachment commander down there. Eventually had to relieve her of duty. The detachment was still going to be operating for about 45 days. So I selected Cynthia to go down there, take care of the detachment, make sure everybody got home safe, continue doing the mission, and make sure that the Air Force was represented proudly. Within 3 days, she turned around the morale. She had the guys out working. They were happy to be working, and things were going exceptionally well. The Army was extremely pleased. A couple of projects she finished up her team. They replaced about 5.7 miles of wiring in the detainee camp, which we maintained about 10,000 detainees at the time. She also built the first 6 interrogation cells that met all the Red Cross standards, because this is after the Abu Ghraib newsworthy events occurred. So we built brand new interrogation cells, all met Red Cross standards, inspected by the Red Cross. They were extremely impressed by what we did. She also helped the Marines quite a bit. The Marines' job at Abu Ghraib was to perform perimeter defense for the Army and the Air Force people that were there. And they stood up in watchtowers. And their watchtowers were about 500 feet from multiple high-rise buildings outside of the prison that you could actually see into the prison. So they were basically within sniper range. They had 2 rows of sandbags that they stood behind and hoped that they did not get shot. Cynthia and her team went up and at 30 different locations installed 1/4-inch steel plating on the outside, 1/4-inch steel plating on the inside between the sandbags, which definitely improved the survivability of the Marines. And those guys had a new appreciation for what Air Force engineers could do. And whenever we needed something during convoys, the Marines were there. Lastly, during her time there, Cynthia completed 22 convoys over the road between Abu Ghraib Prison and Baghdad International Airport. And this route happened to be one of the most dangerous routes we had for IEDs. But she went out there with her people, made sure that they got it done, and brought them all back home safely. Last big accomplishment while we were deployed, we were given short notice tasking to stand up what was called a public works team at a place called Tikrit, Iraq, which is where Saddam was born. As a matter of fact, I believe we actually grabbed one of Colonel Corse's majors, Major Bloomer, on very short notice, and he became our team chief over there. He had about 10 days notice. We had about 5 days notice to get this place up and running. So we went up there, Cynthia took the lead, And within 5 days, she had mobility, vehicles, computers, office space, memorandum of agreement with the Army, a transition plan with the Army, because the Army had a team, and their plan was they were leaving. If we didn't get there in time, then we had to start from scratch. So she successfully took care of that. We had a very successful transition, and that team did wonders in the future. So then we returned, and in July of 2005, Cynthia PCS'd over to Hickam Air Force Base here and joined the headquarters PACAT staff. Initially, she came over as the command maintenance engineer, but after about 5 months, she was moved in as the youngest branch chief on our staff and became the chief of GeoBase, primarily because Major Dave Noby was deploying, and then by the time he got back, he was going to PCS. With a background in GeoBase for both Edwards and Charleston, Cynthia just did a bang-up job with the GeoBase team. They mapped out 188 contingency airfields throughout the PACOM AOR so that we could bring any type of aircraft to these multiple airfields in response to either a contingency operation or humanitarian operation. Our team supported Terminal Fury, which is the big exercise for 13th Air Force. Again, it did a bang-up job. The team also deployed something called an internet mapping function. That was the lead for the Air Force approved and now accepted AOPS, the Airfield Obstruction System, which has now become an Air Force standard. Again, multiple accomplishments in the GeoBase office. It was a recognized fact across the Air Force that PACDAV's GeoBase program was #1 in the Air Force. Also, I had to take some of the additional duties for my other majors who were deployed and asked Cynthia to do them. Those things included creating staff packages for new hires, creating squadron commander packages for Colonel Corson and the other division chiefs to review. And all I can tell you is that it's a very detail-oriented and very heavy task that Cynthia came through with flying colors. So well that both years we picked up every single one of the people that we went after, the squadron commanders here in PACA. So Cynthia has, again, multiple times accomplished multiple events, always been at the spearhead, always been successful. She moved over to the program shop working for Mr. Thompson last year, and she was responsible for all the programming for all of the units in Korea and Misawa Air Base, Japan. And she's doing a bang-up job there, especially working with the dorms, making sure that our airmen have the best dorms to live in, and that we will improve, and you won't see things on CNN about Air Force dorms, like maybe some of the other services. So after selection to major, which she has been waiting for this day for nearly 18 months, quite a time. She's kept her nose clean and stayed out of trouble. We're going to make her a major today, and as a reward for all of her hard work and deeds, she's getting ready to take on probably the best, well, I won't say the best, but the most fun job that she will ever have in the United States Air Force, and that's the Chief of Ops position at the Yokota Air Base, where she'll have about 500 people working for her, and after about a month, she will become the acting commander for 4 months. So she has big shoes to fill, but based on her accomplishments in the past, I'm sure she will do extremely well. So let's make her a major. Thank you.